So, ich denke, wir sind...
Right, I think we're about ready. So we'll start off directly with the next presentation. At this point, I'll just hand over the microphone, and the young lady here is going to introduce herself.
Ich bin Elena.
I'm Elena. I'm 14 years old. I come from Riedberg, which is in Bavaria. And I'm introducing Rob from Australia. Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Well, hello everybody. You have to get used to my accent. I'll try to speak slowly enough for you to be able to understand. We do have a very strange accent in Australia. We tend to be like Southern American. We have very flat vowels. Hello, how are you? So I'll try not to be quite so Australian. This is my third conference. In 2012, I came here for the first time. I was very nervous, and David Brown helped me out because I emailed him. I said, what's it like at the German conference? You know, how does it work? And he sent a video of this venue and you people who were there that year. And it just seemed very relaxed and informal, so I felt really much better about coming and speaking to you. So it's been a wonderful experience. You actually have a superstar in your midst here, and that happens to be Claudia. We've just had the privilege, David and my partner Wayne and I have been just had 5 days with the Jungens at their home in Borbath. And in the basement, I don't know whether you call it the basement anyway, underneath you have an office. And do you know the story of Mary Poppins? Mary Poppins has a bag. She can pull out a bird, and she can pull out an umbrella, and she can pull out all sorts of things. Well, out of that little office, Claudia pulls out this conference. There are boxes, and there's everything beautifully organised, and they get put into a van, and they arrive here and unpacked. So all this magic happens without you ever feeling that there's this sort of thing going on. But we get to see how Claudia juggles the balls and makes this happen. And she is amazing at it. You are very privileged to have this wonderful woman who does this conference for you, because it's a lot of hard work and she does it in a relaxed, seamless way. So you are really amazing, Claudia. Thank you. The other person who's involved is Julia. Julia's up there, Julia Benson. So we met in Miami, and so I kind of got here because of you in a way, because you spread the word, which was nice. But the main thing for me, I want to say to you, there's a lovely woman who used to come every year and help out, every 2 years and help, and that was Julia's mum. Carola, and Carola died just not very long ago. She was here at the last conference, and at the very first conference, Carola hosted me at her, where she lived as it wasn't really an aged care facility, it was more like a Hilton hotel for people who are older. It was really lovely, and so I had that privilege of really getting to know your mum at that time too in Heidelberg, and she was a wonderful woman, so I really am sad that she's not here. There's something I need to explain too. Up here on my name, there's Rob Last, AM. Now, what is that AM? Well, it's actually an award that you get in Australia, and on the back of your wonderful magazine, there's the medals that you get. Now, I never did this work for getting a medal, but I had two people in Australia nominated me. So you have to have somebody who nominates you for these things. I just think every parent in the world who has children who have special needs should get an AM. You deserve an award for that. Anyway, the two people then asked for referees. So there had to be a range of referees who would then write about me, and that would go into the submission to the government as a nominee. So there are 4 people here who were referees for me. There was Tim and David and Connie and Claudia. So not only did I have professionals who were nominating, teacher, doctors, geneticist and mum. So I had this wonderful, and an endocrinologist, there was Jeremy from the UK, nominated me, and I had the privilege of reading what they wrote about me. All of it untrue, but it was very heartwarming to have that happen. So on April the 19th this year, my partner Wayne, my sister and my brother-in-law and one of the women who nominated me, we went to Government House in Victoria, and there was a ceremony where I received the medals. And so not only do you get 1 medal, you get 4. So there was one big one, then one smaller one, and one really little one, and then a little ribbon thing that you get as well. I meant to wear them, so I meant to wear them now because I'm at a special occasion, but I can't do that, it's too embarrassing. So thank you for your nomination of me for the AM. Another thing, there's one more thing I wanted to say. The mum and dad of this young man are here, some over here. I believe he's very interested in Australia. He is very welcome to come and talk to me or Wayne about Australia anytime. All right, so will you introduce us, please? Okay. How did he get interested in Australia? Who knows? Yeah, he just is. All right. So anyway, I'm here to talk to you about what I've named it, which is Friendships, Belonging and Connections. And that came to me because parents have talked about that issue with me over the many years. I've been involved in working in this field for a long time, like David and Tim and the others. Tim and Nancy for different reasons. They are professionals, but they are parents of an adult who has charge. So I always thought there was an issue about kids and the difficulty in creating friendships and connections. And then there was an article that was written in the American newsletter, which is called Charge Accounts. And this family were attending the Orlando conference, which was the last conference. Pardon me. And they were their mum and dad and their son, Christian. And in the article, Christian and Andrew came up, and here's the article. You don't have to read that, I'll just read it for you. But in the article, it says, Molly wrote, "Mum is Molly. Typically, Christian prefers to stay on his iPad and not socialise. However, this night we encouraged him to at least say hi and share his name with his peer group. Quickly, he met Andrew and another teenager with charge. They had a lot in common. They had interest in how to train your dragon and iPads. These 2 boys sat by each other and communicated through sign and their iPads. Their interaction was unprecedented, and we decided that creating opportunities for their connection to grow would be a focus of our weekend. Over the weekend, the boys kept that connection alive, and at all the conference, we always feel acceptance, and immediately we feel we belong. Hence the connection and the belonging. And certainly in my experience, that's what's happens at the conferences, and it's happening here right now. It happens in America, it happens at your in-between conference each year, I'm sure. And we just had our conference in Australia, which we have every 2 years as well. It's Australia and New Zealand, and that was just 3 weeks ago. And so the same thing happens. This is where parents get to feel they are part of a group of people who understand what's going on. And I'm sure out in the big wide world, not always does that happen, that people have an understanding of what's going on. So here you can feel so safe and protected that we all kind of have an understanding of what is going on for you. This is the last German conference I was at. This is 2 years ago, and this depicts this room and this chance of people to meet and connect. And I was really impressed. The Charge News, you call it a magazine or a newsletter? A magazine? It's a most wonderful publication. It's the best in the world. And this article was on in the magazine about friendships as well. So that also added to my thing about talking about this kind of topic. So in belonging and connection, what is the difference? Belonging relates to the symbolic spaces which feel familiar, comfortable and secure, and to which a person feels emotionally attached. We develop a sense of belonging over time, remembering experiences, people and places. I'll just run through that again. Belonging relates to the symbolic spaces which feel familiar, comfortable and secure, and to which a person feels emotionally attached, and we develop a sense of belonging over time, remembering experiences, people and places. Now that's the case for people who've been here before, but for new families, that's probably not the case. You probably are feeling kind of a lot of apprehension, nervous about what this weekend will be, nervous about meeting other people who have kids with charge, meeting the kids and the adults who have charge. So it's a very different experience. But everybody here was a first-timer. All of us. We always all came to a conference for the very first time once upon a time. So we also understand that apprehension, that nervousness, and I think it's such a courageous step you make when you walk into an event like this. So well done and congratulations to you for being here. Connections refer to the quality and number of connections with people and place. So I'll say it again, connectedness refers to the quality and number of connections with people and place. So the key elements are helping a sense of belonging is connection with friendships, acceptance by peers, feeling valued and capable, having supportive relationships with key adults at home and at school. And that's really, again, the experience you have here at these conferences. So in the beginning, for people who have charge syndrome, the belonging and connectedness may develop very differently. And so you've all experienced this, I'm sure, where your first connections are really not with your neighbourhood or the kids in the neighbourhood and whoever is local to you. It's more about the people in the hospital, the medical team, the therapy team. So this experience of beginning is very different. So any siblings that you have, any other kids that you have, that experience is not being repeated with your kid who has charge. We know that the hospital experience can be shortish or it can be really, really long. And so that's also part of that beginning for you. It's likely that that circle of people stay with you for a long time too. And also within that, it can mean that your friendships from before can change. So people who were good mates, good friends, may move and not be there for you. Others will be, but not maybe. So that can be another dynamic that changes for you as well. So the connectedness may be with family, with your parents, of course, with siblings, we've got to talk about siblings, grandparents, good on them, and the medical and therapy team, which includes doctors, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech pathologists, speech therapists, nutritionists, special education teachers, and more and more and more. So that is your team, your gang, your mob. And out of that, the significant others in your life will be, once out of hospital, the significant others may be your home visiting team. So this is a family I met a long time ago now, because Sophie is 12, and so their life changed dramatically. This family happened to only live a few kilometres from where we live. We live in a small village outside of Melbourne, and for the preschool director came to me and she said, there's a family who has had a child with Child syndrome who live near us, and they're in hospital. And so out of the blue, this family stepped into our lives as well, and are still obviously in our lives. And this is a typical scenario of a therapist at home. So this is something that you wouldn't have experienced with your siblings, their siblings. So there you are in I've got to just blink on this. Oh, back one. There.
Take up her communication bit, and that she's secure in a lot of children who actually get nothing back because mum or carer may not be picking up any of the cues. In the end, they just do it themselves and they become quite solitary. And then it's really hard to get them to learn how to communicate, because they think, oh, why bother? You know, no one's looking at me. Oh, sorry. Where's coffee? And I mean, even that one, you might...
So there's the therapist with the mum, and there's the kid paying no attention, not interested at all in the whole process, and that's often very typical too. So you, as people who are the therapists in the home, our job is to certainly interact with the child, but also to interact with the parents. So everybody's had that experience, I presume. It's been part of your life. Yep. So then preschool is another experience too. So here's Sophie, a little bit older, and she's with her playmates at preschool and imitating what they do. I always love the fact that your kid can go to a local preschool. Is it the same word here, preschool? Yeah, before kindergarten, sort of, yeah. Because as a friend of mine said, you can't fail sandpit. So in other words, you can't fail finger painting and you can't fail block building, because you could be then doing what the other kids do at your own level of expertise. And also with the other kids in the community being there, you're also getting a chance for the community kids to find out about your kid and what's going on there, and hopefully that can lead into connections and friendships and being invited to birthday parties or whatever in the local community. So I always feel that's a really important stage where at least you can have inclusive education. Many of you choose inclusive education for much further, I know that, and I'll talk about that a little later as well. Do you know Ellen? Ellen from Facebook? Yeah, Ellen. I don't know whether you know. Well, anyway, I've known Ellen since she was very little, and she's now 32. So another thing that can happen is not only are these young people that we work with when they're little, they also become part of our family, and so we're still connected all these years later. So hearing Gail talk, you'll hear Gail talk tomorrow, Sunday, and David and Tim. So these people who come into our lives can stay around in our lives for quite a long time, and that's a great privilege for us to have that happen. So I want to lead on to then diversity and difference. So it's something that is commonplace for you now. You have a kid who's different and is part of a diverse community. And you see people who will look at you in a particular way or look at your kid. And we just actually I talked with a mum. She said, oh yeah, people think they have permission just to ask me questions at the supermarket, like, because I have this kid. And that happens. And I was telling a story of a mum that she had her child at the supermarket or out in and she was tube feeding, And a mother came up and said, "You're a very lazy mum. Why don't you feed your child normally like other people do?" And that's a weird response, of course. And then how do you handle that? It's just kind of ignorance. Okay, so, and I also know that on good days, it's fine if people are curious about your kid and, if you've got feeling a bit strong that day, but also if you're on a fragile day, when people do stare a bit too long or do make a comment, or that is a very difficult day for you too. And that can happen, I know, too, at any time. Claudia, I'll be raising your name again, Claudia and Heiko. There was how the kids can have mannerisms. You know that. And Jonas has two at the moment. He's got a head jerk one, and he's got a hand flap one. So Claudia said, don't like the head jerk very much. Hand flapping fine, don't mind that at all. But this head jerk is not what I'm enjoying. So I'm sure you have the ones that are okay, yeah, I can put up with that one. But there's that one I don't like so much. I think it's great that Tim and Nancy cope with Jacob. It's going around the entire room at somewhere, licking the wall. I think that's a very big step to do that. So here, we don't see the differences. We see you, we see the kids, we see the siblings, it's all very familiar and okay. But you step down into the village of Oberwessel and you'll notice, of course, people will be noticing the differences. So there's two very different worlds going on there. You're the mum who told me about that story. So yeah, here diversity and difference really is the normal, and out in the big wide world, it's not so. And that's what I wonder how the kids perceive that world too. Here, they are not getting any kind of odd attention. But then when they're out in the big wide world, I wonder how much they perceive what people are perceiving them to be. Are they over staring at you too much, or are they a bit too curious, or whatever it is, then what is their reaction to that? What's the effect on that for them? And I just think they're amazing how they do seem to rise above that. That may be because they don't see it. That may be because they don't hear it very well, and that may be because they don't care very much about that either, that they are who they are and they're fine about that. So there, it's a very different kind of approach. In the wonderful magazine, newsletter, there was a story on a young man who's had his facial palsy altered. So he's had surgery to bring the side that's droopy back up. And that brought me to mind that this little girl, Sophie, again, a bit older, has a very significant facial palsy. So that article will be very useful. I've asked Claudia to translate it into English for us so I can show it to parents. It's probably not something they would advise their child to have until the child is old enough to make their own decision, as this young man did, I think, in the magazine. So he's had this surgery done to even up his face. Sophie there is smiling, and she's with another young man I know very well, Sean, and they've built a wonderful connection and friendship. But now she's kind of learnt to only grin. So she's altered her way of managing that, and that was her own choice. She just worked that out in time herself. I want to... a few more photos. That's Sophie and Sean. We had a fundraiser to raise money for the conference. So Sean's now developed a beard. Sophie's got her grin. Sean, who's not an avid dancer, but she got him up on the floor. So that was a pretty good effort. And apparently, then at the school dance, school social, whatever you call it, prom, Sean got up and danced, even though he didn't have Sophie with him. So that was a step for him. Another story I want to tell you about diversity is about a woman named Turia Pitt. She's an Australian woman. She was very badly burnt in an ultramarathon in Western Australia, which was taking them through kind of grasslands and in the kind of outback area of Australia. A grass fire caught them and she received burns to 64% of her body. She lost all the fingers of one hand and had two removed of another hand. And this is her, and she is another superstar that I will talk about. She's faced this huge change in her life with great dignity and great self-esteem. She had a partner before, and she still has the same partner now, Mike. And she has a child now. That's her on the front page of the major magazine for the Women's Weekly. It's a big magazine in Australia. So she's become a symbol, a person of difference. And she was named Woman of the Year in 2014. And here's Mike and Turia with their new baby. Again, I think that's the kind of role models we need to be seeing all the time to reinforce that difference is just part of everybody's life. We all have our differences, but for some it's much more obvious and some of it's less obvious. There were three movies last year which also talked about and demonstrated difference and diversity. The first one was Wonder. Wonder was about a young boy, about 12, who has Treacher-Collins syndrome, which is part of the deaf-blind group of syndromes. And so he clearly has different facial features, hearing loss and so forth. And he was, the film is about him going to a mainstream school. Up until then, he'd been homeschooled by his mum and dad. And then he goes to, so it's that story about his journey in his own life. Really good film, really well received. Julia Roberts' mum, so you know, it's big stars. Then the next one was The Shape of Water. Who has seen The Shape of Water? Yeah, it's a very strange film, but a very interesting film. It's really science fiction, but it has a woman at the centre of it who isn't deaf, but she has no expressive language. She can hear okay, but she doesn't express through speech. She expresses through sign language. And she's working in some kind of strange otherworld factory where they, as a cleaner, and she has to clean the areas. In one of the rooms she cleans, there's a strange kind of creature that lives in a big pool. And she builds a relationship with this creature because it creeps out of the pool and they make a connection. And the only way I can describe the creature is like a merman. Instead of a mermaid, a merman. I thought he was quite sexy, actually. Anyway, that's beside the point. And so anyway, this is the story of their friendship and relationship. It's a really good film. Friends have said, oh, no, but it won the Best Picture on Oscar last year, so or this year, and so it's I think a really good film about difference. And then of course Beauty and the Beast. You all know Beauty and the Beast, I'm sure, where Belle falls in love with the Beast, and of course then she can transform the Beast by him finding true love into the handsome prince. That's, you know, the fairy story. But that's about somebody finding the inner person. As in The Shape of Water, she finds the inner person of the merman. In Beauty and the Beast, Belle finds the inner person of the Beast. And so I think they're great films to probably, certainly Beauty and the Beast for kids to watch, and whatever they get out of it is what they get out of it. It's their own experience. One of the things that I do notice in our kids is, I mentioned before that they don't seem to particularly notice that they're being perhaps looked at. They're very happy to pose for photos. There's not like, I don't want to do that. I know one young woman in Australia who will not have her photo taken. They get up and speak at conferences, introduce the speakers, very, very happy to do that. I think they walk through the streets of any city with pride. They seem to be comfortable in their own skin. And they don't seem to notice or care what people might be noticing. However, at preschools and schools, that may be a bit different when the other kids who are not as kind maybe making a noticing in a funny way, and that may affect how they do perceive themselves. So, in advocating diversity and difference, I just think this is the new topic for me to really say, if you have a difference in any way, or if you are diverse in any way, whether it would be through a same-sex relationship, or whether it would be because you are African American or Indigenous Australian or whatever, then it is important for you to have that same self-esteem about who you are. There was another particular woman in Australia who I had great admiration for. Her name is Stella Young, and she became a major advocate for disability. Her diagnosis was osteogenesis imperfecta. It's the short body, little legs, and really wheelchair, has to be wheelchair. But boy, was she a powerful advocate for disability. If you, when she was 14, she lived in a smallish town in Victoria, Australia, and at 14, she went to all the businesses on the main street and said, you need to have proper accessibility so I can come here to shop. So at 14, she was doing that. So she also did a TED Talks. Do you know what I mean by TED Talks? Yeah, those on varying topics. And she did it in Sydney in April 2014. So if you're interested, Stella Young, Y-O-N-U-G, TED Talks, April 2014. Unfortunately, awful. Stella died suddenly when she was 32 years old. And I could see her emerging as being this major advocate in Australia for disability, like Turia is for people who have become changed by an experience. So, I've got to find out where I'm up to. All right. Building and nurturing friendships, is that? Yep. So to build and nurture a friendship, frequent emotional, pleasant interactions need to occur, and these interactions need to happen in a relatively stable framework of concern for each other. In the mainstream school environment where the student is in an inclusive program, the strategies the school has in place may be a buddy system, a mentor program, special interest groups, and support workers in the classroom who encourage friendships. But this is not the same as forming your own friendships. So it's kind of a created environment to help friendships. It's good that it's there, and it's important that it's there, but it's still not quite the same as me meeting somebody and thinking, oh, gee, I really connect with you, and I reckon we need to swap emails or phone each other or whatever it is. Hopefully you'll get that experience this weekend, that you'll find somebody you connect with well and do swap addresses and emails, addresses and phone numbers. So it's a kind of, the friendships we normally develop is through mutual engagement. So for the student with charge, they don't get all those nuances. They don't get all the facial expressions, the body language, the subtleties, and they may be a bit confused about what's going on too. So it isn't an easy process for them. And it can mean that in time they may withdraw from that process rather than engaging further. In the specialist school environment, we call them specialist schools. That means it's a school for kids who have disabilities. And I was an advocate of mainstream, as you could hear me say, so it can be very different in the specialist school environment. Here I'm talking about finding your tribe. And so at that specialist school, that can be when kids find their tribe. Do you know what I mean by finding your tribe? Does that make sense? Yeah. So I've got lots and lots of photos about finding your tribe. This is us at the fundraiser in February this year. This is Madeline with her son Sean. You've already seen Sean with Sophie. And this is Paul and Annie with Raf. And he's now off to high school next year. This is Trent with his mum and dad, Bernie and Chris. Now, Trent is learning to drive. He's nearly got his driver's licence. So his vision is good enough for him to be able to have that experience. That's pretty rare. I think I know of somebody in Canada who has achieved, and you've got one here who's achieved driving too. And that seems to be a very, very important step. For some, it's not that important. They don't care. But for some, that's a loss to not be able to drive. I mentioned siblings. So this is Robbie with his sister Laura. And she has been a very involved person in his life. And this is Ashley with her sister. This is a friendship. Sophie again with Ava at preschool. Sophie here having a bit of a rest with the other kids in the preschool. Love this photo. This is at one of the American conferences. These two kids are kind of finding each other and saying, I think you are a bit like me. I mentioned Ellen before about Facebook. This is Ellen at her 21st birthday. And this is with her tribe who came to the 21st, many of them wheelchair, and they had a great time. It can be finding your tribe with professionals. This is Casey Stratton Gadke from America, and this is Belinda from Australia who has charge. She's an adult who has charge, and Belinda's been to many of the conferences. Belinda actually was the keynote speaker at the Miami conference and did an amazingly wonderful job. So she's very proud of having been invited to do that and doing it. This is David, you know David, and this is Ellen with David. This is Jacob, another Jacob with me, and Ellen with me. This is another Jacob. This is the Hartsons Jacob. This is Tim and Nancy's son, and he's with his tribe here. His tribe are his carers primarily. These are the people who, I don't think Tim and Nancy explained, they have a house and they've bought the house next door, and that house next door has become Jacob's house. So he is in his own environment, his own house, but it happens to be next door. But he has 24-hour care, so that's a range of people who come and do the caring at home. And so he's always got his bevy of people around him. Last time I think we had Kim here, Kim Blake, Dr. Kim Blake. Do you remember Kim if you were here? Yep. That's Kim and myself in 1996 at the Portland conference with Nate, and this is us in 2016 at that conference, so Kim, Nate and myself. Nate's a New Yorker. And then here's another adults who have found each other at one of the conferences and have become great mates as well. Carly and Belinda have become good mates. They've met at conference as well. Carly's American and Belinda's Australian. And these three wild women, these are youngies from Australia, one from New Zealand and two from South Australia, so they're not nearby. But boy, have they built a friendship and a mateship that works. So this is them in 2000, I'll have to find my note, which year, 2006. And this is 2016. And now Ellen again. Ellen's a bit of a star. She features a lot with Belinda. I love this. This is the beginning of a romance. And this is Kirsten and David. And this is them at the last conference. And they were sort of dating a bit at the conference, which I thought was pretty good. And on this one, I want you to spot who has charge syndrome. There's the Tim students. You know, the Tim students are always there. Which ones are the Tim students? There's Casey, you may be able to spot her. So the young man has charge from New Zealand. Amy, who has got the book up to her throat here, that's another little skill she learned. She's got a tracheotomy, so she's hiding that for the photo. And up the back with the big beam and the long hair, that's Yasmin, and she has charge. She had quite a lot of surgery to alter her looks, so she looks very, very non-chargy, shall we say. And then this is, again, the tribe at one of the conferences, a mix of the therapists, the TIM students, and those who have charge as well. I talked about going to the mainstream school, and then maybe that journey will change. I think you've got to keep your options really open about the journey of the educational experience. So for Sean, who I've mentioned before, he was in mainstream school, preschool, primary school, that's year through to year 6, and then from year 7 through to year 10 he was in a mainstream secondary school, and the challenges became really too great. And so the family chose, along with him being part of the process, and checking out another school, and so a specialist school was found, which was not far from home and which seemed to be the right spot. So there was a transitioning period, a couple of days at the specialist school, 3 days at the other school, until Sean felt this was the right place for him to be. And it turned out to be really the right place to be. So at that school, he found Ethan, a mate, developed a friendship. Ethan has low vision, maybe other stuff that we can't quite work out, but anyway, he is suitable in that specialist school placement. So this, we'll see if we can get this to work. We'll see how we go. So what they're doing is they're planning an excursion, well, planning an outing from the school. So they're using their computers to plan which bus they have to take, where they're going to go, how they're going to do it. An intervener will go with them, but they're doing the planning themselves. So as you can see, Sean needs to use, go very close to his computer. So it's a very functional skill, how to get her out and about. Recently they were able to go to the city, which is a 1-hour train trip by themselves, so they didn't need somebody with them. And this is them now out on the outing.
Let's wait for us as well, guys, when you get there.
Oop. And they're having to find the bus, the correct bus.
Bus stop
Bus stop is, where is the bus stop is?
For a road name?
so if I couldn't have to put something.
Does it have the name of the bus stop on the sheet?
So let's find a crossing then, guys.
Yeah, I need to find where the crossing is.
Okay, Sean knows. We'll go this way, shall we?
Okay then.
Yep.
But I think I saw a crossing here.
So the thing with Sean, I'll show you a few more in a minute. He started off with sign language, so the family embraced sign language at the very beginning, developed their skills in sign language as quickly as they could. So he became immersed in a sign language system at home. So that's the way I believe you have to do it, because that's the way you learn another language. Sign language is another language. So before he got all the necessary auditory equipment, which he has had quite a lot of, but what's been amazing for Sean is he's transitioned into speech. But his speech, difficulty in understanding his speech isn't about his hearing loss, it's about his facial palsy. So that it really affects his ability to articulate speech well. So when he can't be understood, he gets frustrated a bit, but he also can rely on his sign language if he needs to. When he's sick or in hospital and unwell, he reverts back to using sign language. So it's a backup language for him now. He'd prefer not to. He really likes to be understood. He wants his speech to be understood, and he does get frustrated if people don't understand him. And I have to say, sometimes I find him difficult to understand too. But I persevere. Say, come on, Sean, I didn't understand. Can you tell me again, please? He has speech therapy all the time, which is, I can hear it improving his speech as well. But his desire to speak well is what's really helping him to speak clearly. Now, we've just had that one. And so, if you listen carefully, you'll hear a name that you know in Germany.
What's the name of your street? Okay, and that's on the map, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now the bus stop.
Yes.
It's now the Alton store.
You do. Absolute.
So, who got it? The bus stop is near the Aldi store. Yeah, we have Aldi too. We love Aldi. And the outing is coming to an end, so they're heading back to school. And they're back. So this is they go to each other's birthday parties. They go for outings together, and so that's the kind of connection that you'd love for your kids to have as well. But you can't plan that. It doesn't come because you want it. It becomes because you create situations where it might and hopefully will happen. So, looking at strategies at school, when you are thinking of a new school or a new location or another transition to another school, have an orientation to that school. Several visits good prior to commencement, and school needs to be a familiar and a safe place. Prior to that, I would say in the choosing of the school process, you would have looked at the school's website, you would have looked at who the principal is, you might have got another parent to give you a bit of a review of the school, and you've probably, hopefully gone and interviewed the principal. Now, I don't know how easy that is for you to do in Germany, but at home I really want parents to go and say, you need to tell me about your school. What are your policies on these issues? So the kids also need, and the parents need, an orientation to the school staff. They need to be knowledgeable on the challenges of charge syndrome and familiar with the students. So people like Gail, David and myself are the people who go to the school and will talk about what charge syndrome is to help the staff understand what this thing is, what this means. Always involve the student in the school commencement process, if that seems appropriate. One of the things I really, really like is to highlight the skills and interests of the students: communication, academic skills, personal skills, social skills, recreational skills, leisure, sport, hobbies, and community involvement. And encourage a buddy system too. That's a great system that schools have in place as well. So the aim is for the student to feel capable in not only the academic achievements, but in the whole school experience. They need to feel valued and being appreciated for these qualities the student brings to individuals and to the wider school community. So in other words, the student can bring greater enrichment to the whole school experience as well. It's not just the school coming to them. The common interest groups at school can be art classes, it can be the maths group, it can be the sporting part, it might be book club. Sean, who I talked about, you saw there, Sean is absolutely age appropriate with his reading. He can read anything, he's really, really literate. And so these kinds of interest groups are a good thing to where you meet with other students who have the same interests. So out of that, a good connection can occur as well. So you're nurturing connections when they occur. I don't know if that's so easy, because then it can be like the parents are getting in there to say, oh, you know, you could have a good friendship here. I don't know how easy that is to do, but certainly being alert to the possibility of a connection is good. Encouraging initiative and independence is really always most important. And this is trusting that the students have the capability to manage their social times and autonomy whenever they choose. So backing off and letting that independence occur. The time may be with other students or maybe just by themselves. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. And other times they may need the support of an adult also, but it's usually a mix of both. Tim and Nancy introduced me to a concept called Circle of Friends, which I think is the bottom one here. Circle of Friends is really good program. I'd love you to Google it and just get a bit more of a feel for it. The way it works in schools is the classroom, a whole classroom will be asked, well, would you like to be part of a group where we kind of work with whoever the child might be, let's say Sean, and he's involved in this discussion, where we kind of work out what Sean wants, what he needs, and what his interests are. And so out of that, a few hands go up, yeah, I'll be part of that. So that little group has a meeting, separate from the classroom, but maybe at a lunchtime, and with that student, they talk about, and hearing from the student, what it is that the challenges are, what are the difficulties, what are the good things, what do you like, what do you don't like, and they get a really greater feel for this student's needs and what he wants from that experience. So this program sort of goes into that much more detail. Sean had that experience as well, and it was a really good, I know Jacob's had that experience as well, the Circle of Friends. So it doesn't have to do with people who are very able. It can have all abilities, can find the Circle of Friends very useful. The best, I was searching for it last night again. Just Google Circle of Friends programs in school, and then it'll come up, because it kind of embraces other things as well. So talking about strategies at home, last time I was here I spoke about passions instead of obsessions. I think passions is a better word. We all have our passion about what we love to do. They may be obsessions, but passions is better. And so it's good to find people who have a common passion, which may be the book club, or it may be other things. So notice the passion, nurture the passion, and embrace that passion as being okay. Find individuals, groups and clubs who have the same passion. Use the passion as an educational opportunity and as possible employment opportunity. This is really important to me now, because the kids I know from a long time ago are reaching employment age and have gone into employment age. And it's that big thing of, well, what will they do after school? You know, will they get a job? And I know that sits in your brains as well. For Sean, again, his passion is caravans. Caravans, who would have thought? So they go off to the caravan show twice a year in Melbourne. Sean plans his day at the caravan show from the website. He goes through all the caravan companies he wants to go to, the order he wants to visit them, and so he does all this planning beforehand, and then at the caravan show he then ticks the boxes on this one first, this one next, and he takes photos on the way through so that he can revisit his experience at the caravan show. And at the one, Wayne and I went with them a couple of years ago, and he met the owners of a small caravan company who were really interested in him. They were very comfortable with who they were meeting. They were very open to Sean visiting them at the caravan factory. And so out of that, who knows, do we have a job in the future for Sean working in caravan industry. So that's why I talk about noticing the passion and what it possibly may lead to. This is a bunch of photos about kids' passions. You may have seen this, I've shown this before. This is David. David has a passion for horse riding. He's really good at it. Look at his medals. Look at the sashes he's won. That probably started by being involved in riding for the disabled. I don't know whether it's the same organisation here, but it's kind of, in America they call it hippotherapy. Here we call, in Australia we call it riding for the disabled. So it's about an introduction to helping you balance by being on a horse. Belinda, Belinda is now one of our directors of our Charge Association in Australia and New Zealand. We have two, Ellen and Belinda. So she loves to travel. She has very low vision. She's legally blind. She doesn't use a cane. She should, but she doesn't use a cane. And she loves to travel the world and manages very well. She's very confident. She knows how to ask people for help. She doesn't really always want to do that, but if she's lost at the airport and she can't read the departure thing, she will really clearly ask somebody. But she uses her phone really skillfully to search out information and then checks out what she needs to know. This is Sophie, the little one who I talked about earlier. Sophie chose to be part of a basketball team. You know, basketball, you know, when you don't have any semicircular canals, you know, your vestibular system's not too complete. Oh, is this a good sport? She proved me wrong, absolutely. So watch Soph have a go. So the thing with Sophie, she only wanted to play with the boys. And that she got her wish, so she does. She's one of the kids in the boys' team. This is Julia. Julia's has a lot of challenges, but one of the things she likes to do is sort and stack. And so here she has a supermarket job of stacking. She also works at the local gym where she organises paperwork for them. This is Sarah from New Zealand, also a wonderful horsewoman. She recently competed in the equestrian team for the Special Olympics in New Zealand and won medals. This is Mitchell, who's mad about Australian football, or Australian rules football. So he gets to, because it's like using his charge syndrome thing, he gets to meet some of the players and they have a chat to him. He's in seventh heaven. And here's Sean at the caravan show doing his thing. He's got his takeaway bag from the show and he's taking his photos of the caravans. So here's some tips for parents. You lot. Networking is important, but it requires energy, perseverance, research, positive outlook and assertiveness. Sometimes you have all those intact, sometimes you don't. I understand. So when you feel strong and you feel you've got the energy, yeah, networking is really important. Whether it's networking with other parents or networking with schools or networking with the church group or the football team or whoever, it's important that you do that. You need to have the ability to advocate for your kids' strengths, gifts and talents. Again, the positive spin, all the things that are good, the abilities. It's not about the disability, it's about the abilities that your child has. And an ability to describe your children's needs, or your child's needs, the challenges and the supports required. So it's, I think, listing the strengths of your child is really important, and have that as something you can give to people. So these things might be when to provide rest and recharge times, how to make these happen, where they might be best to occur. Gail will talk about that, have the range of options there, and why they need it. Why do they need this rest time? So that's all very important too. I like this one too, considering and describing the ideal school or work day for the student. What's a good day? How does a good day pan out for this person? And a clear understanding of what is not acceptable for the student's future. This is when you're talking to the principal about the school program or, pardon me, or an employer. You need to find out what is not okay, stuff you don't want for your kid. One of the things I haven't actually put in here, but it came to me last night, I think one of the big fears, of course, is sexual abuse. And so that needs to be something that is in your mind, or it will be in your mind, and that you need to be the protective agent in that area. I've got some tips for parents from an American lad, a young man, who has cerebral palsy, and I really like this little video as well. He makes 4 points, and so I'll just leave it with you. And I think the interpreters are fine with interpreting this too.
Do you remember that time when I broke your toilet?
I will never forget the time you broke my toilet. I don't even know how you did that.
I have a lot of torque when I'm getting on toilet.
This is my friend, Zach Anner. We've been friends for how long?
Like 10 years.
Like 10 years. We're more like siblings. And he's a writer on the ABC show Speechless, and I love him a lot. So I hear from a lot of parents who have kids with disabilities, and I thought that you would be the perfect person to give them some advice.
Okay, well, first of all, I know nothing. But if your kids are anything like me, they're gonna break a lot of toilets. So, like, your toilet budget should be pretty high.
It's true, I can attest to that.
But if you want more general advice, I guess I'll give you like 4.
All right, number 1.
I would say be okay with watching your kids struggle. Like, when I was younger, like, getting dressed independently was like a huge deal for me. It took me like 2 hours to put on my socks the first time.
Oh my gosh.
And my mom was just downstairs like stressing out, pulling her hair out, sweating. But she let me struggle, and now it only takes like 5 minutes for me to put on my socks.
Okay, I love that because I feel like that's even just a great general parenting advice.
Yeah, you gotta let them fail, you gotta let them struggle. And if she hadn't been able to take a step away, I wouldn't be like a cool kid in Los Angeles with the bachelor pad and a candy drawer and an ice cream freezer. And it's sort of like that old adage, give me a fish, feed me for a day, teach me how to buy Swedish fish on Amazon, give me diabetes for a lifetime, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. All right, what's your second piece of advice?
Raise your kids to be considerate, thoughtful adults who aren't always the center of attention. When you have a disability, a lot of times the world just sort of revolves around you, and getting used to that is dangerous. It breeds codependency and sometimes like a weird type of narcissism.
And you're not a narcissist at all.
I am a narcissist. I'm a total narcissist. I don't know if you've noticed, but I park in the middle of doorways and hallways all the time so that no one else can get through. And I don't even realize that I'm doing it. It's just sort of like, I'm here, the party started, no one can leave.
All right, give me number 3.
Be careful about accidentally patronizing your kid. There's a tendency to give kids with disabilities credit that they haven't earned. My brother used to make my mom breakfast on her birthday, and I used to get up in a huff because I was like, say that I helped and like I did something, but I didn't actually do anything. Finding the ways that your kid can actually contribute, help build like strong self-worth, but that's realistic.
So basically, don't give them credit for something they didn't even do. Find something they can do and then give them credit for that.
Like, let your kids' passions lead rather than the disability, because families and individuals with disabilities conflate those things with identity. Whereas if you find what the kid is passionate about, then any struggle that they deal with can be expressed through that passion.
And then you're not just identified as the guy with cerebral palsy.
Yeah, that's the guy that breaks the toilets.
That's my friend who broke my toilet. Okay, Okay, give me number 4.
Number 4, and this is really important, so maybe I should say it direct to camera and be weird about it.
Be weird.
Treat your disabled teenager like a teenager. If you wouldn't barge into your able-bodied 15-year-old bedroom, then don't barge into your child with a disabilities room.
See, this is so important because how would you even learn to live independently if your parents never gave you privacy?
When you're like a special needs family, the lines of intimacy are blurred because, you know, you may be helping your kid get dressed or go to the bathroom, but when you're doing something for your kid, you need to ask yourself, does this work because it worked for us as a family or because it works for the world in general? Because you want to prepare your kid for the world.
Zach, thank you for doing this video.
Well, don't thank me, thank my mom. She's the reason I have anything of value to say.
Susan is amazing. I love her. And next time, we're going to do a video at my house. Except you're not allowed to use my toilet.
All right, well, where do I poop? Do you remember that?
So that's pretty good stuff, I think. Really relevant. Not just for the parents who are now facing teenagers and adults. For the youngies, it's really good future thoughts about how do I, do what we do. And it's coming from somebody who's lived it. That's really important as well. And he's talking my language. I think, he talks about, the passions. I say, well, I couldn't agree more. So he really is okay about, be okay watching your kids struggle, raise your kids to be considerate, thoughtful adults who aren't always the centre of attention. That's really hard to do. Be careful about accidentally patronising your kids. Let your kids' passions lead, not the disability, and treat your disabled teenager like a teenager. So I think they're very good words of advice. The vexed question of bullying. Yeah, your kids have experienced bullying. Has that happened? I can imagine it probably does. The research shows that children with disability experience more bullying than their peers, regardless of the educational setting, their age, gender or type of disability. So establish the school's policy on bullying. You ask the principal, what is your policy on managing bullying? And then you have an answer to deal with. Having a trusted adult, parent, teacher and or friend as somebody to report to you about any bullying being experienced. That's really important too. At the school we were at with Jonas last Tuesday, a young student, she came up to me and we were chatting and I said, well, how is it here? You like school? She said, I get teased a bit, she was a little bit overweight. And I said, oh, that's no good. What do you do about it? She said, oh, I just call them stupid. I said, well, maybe you might say to them that, don't say that, that's hurting my feelings. Well, that's not a nice thing to do. So it is about that stop and you listen to how this has an effect on another human being. It's good to use students who have been bullied, who've come through the experience to educate other students about bullying prevention. And friends and families actually give a wall of support. I like that term, that wall of support for protection and prevention, so that they do feel when something not okay is happening, and this is especially about sexual abuse, they have somebody to go to say this is happening. So, in other words, stop bullying. It's a really hard thing to do. It's been going on for centuries because somehow kids become monsters at particular ages and they love to find the person who is less strong or less able, and that's the person they would go for. I was a little bit effeminate as a child and a young person, and I got bullied because of that too. Another really, really important thing is time alone. I presume your kids, like all of your kids, like to have that time where they're not with anybody, they're alone. Really, really important thing to respect that. That's one of the things I admire in the people, the charged people I know. That is they are comfortable in their own space, way more comfortable than I am. To spend time alone doing what they like to do, to not seek lots of social experiences. In fact, social experiences, if they're quite big, are really challenging. The one-to-one thing, like Sean and Ethan, is a much easier connection. We may perceive them as feeling lonely, but this may be not how they feel. and give lots of permission for time alone. So again, with the Jungens family, I noticed Jonas come and have dinner with us, or lunch, or meal times, and then he would choose to go to his room to be alone. There was no big problem about that. He'd come back out, watch TV with us, then go back to his room. And there was nobody sort of anxious about it or stressed about it. That was his choice. He was in control of that, and it was fine. Okay, and here's Sean again, and he's an avid reader, and that's him having his time to read, and he loves to read, and he loves lying on the couch to read in a particular position that David always talks about, with the leg up over the knee, and that's his reading position. And then I caught these lovely photos of Jonas at the first conference where I was waiting for the transport. Jonas found an umbrella. There was nobody to be there with, so then he played with it and put it up and checked out how it worked, and there it was. So he just had a lovely self-playing time. They're just gorgeous photos of self-discovery about an umbrella. And of course now we have the internet. And the internet is a huge tool. It can be a huge dangerous tool. It can be a huge good tool. So researchers are increasingly recognising the potential of the internet to provide social and emotional support to various groups that share a common goal, identity and experience. So that certainly is the charge parent groups, whether they be here or America or Australia. That's a really great tool for that connection. The internet is the most effective tool for children and adults with charge syndrome because they are spread across the globe and frequently not mixing with other children within their immediate community. They may not have another kid with charge, within many, many miles of them. They don't have somebody nearby or next door. So the internet's providing an opportunity for that connection as well. And also it's a kind of individual thing. You're not having to deal with a social group of people. It's a one-to-one experience often. So the internet therefore provides a central meeting place for those who are unable to regularly meet with similar others at a single geographical location. Benefits of online communities include increased recognition and acceptance from others, reduced social anxiety, reduced isolation and strengthened social support networks, and a greater acceptance of one's own identity. So how many of your kids are actually connecting through the internet? Are the people using the internet? Well, if they're not now, they will be in the future. Yep. So, and this is just some of the social media that's out there for them. So, in conclusion, I want to show you a little story about connection through pictures. These two kids, this is Sean again and Cassandra. Cassandra's from Western Australia, on the other side of the country. Sean's from the eastern side of Australia. We had a family picnic because Sean's relatives were living not far from this picnic spot, so the family were visiting. These two hadn't met before, so it came to lunchtime and it was time to do lunch. So here's the mums coming in to do their lunch. So they're getting hooked up for lunch. Then Cassandra notices that Sean's lunch is like her lunch. And then she refers to Mum to say, wow, look what's happening here. And then they share their lunch. I think they're just the best little story. I love that. Yeah. And then a little hand going over the shoulder, if you notice over there, Sean having a little bit of making a pass, I think. So, in addition, what we see is with children, determination and willpower. That's Sophie when she's learning to walk. She's with her walking aid, and the determination in her face is just astonishing. We see charm, this young man, Brady. And we see friendships, belonging and connecting. So Kim, Julia, Heiko and Claudia. And then here's Rob and Sean at the caravan show. A bit weary at the end of the day. Thank you very much, everybody. Any questions? Any questions?
Gibt es Fragen? Keine, vielleicht von den Jugendlichen?
Maybe the young people have questions? Any of the youngsters?
Nein? Good, no more questions. Vielen Dank,
You
Rob.
have any chance you can ask any of us questions over the weekend too, as you know.
Ja, bitte immer die Referenten ansprechen, Rob, Wayne.
Yes, absolutely. Do talk to the speakers, Rob, Wayne, well, Wayne maybe not, sorry. Rob, David, Tim, Nancy, Gail, Connie, everybody. Just talk to them, approach them. They are very happy to answer questions anytime, always available. Okay, we're a bit earlier than planned. What does the agenda say? Does anybody have an agenda here at the moment? It says break. Okay, let's have a break and we continue when? At 4:15. Okay, that gives us a nice long break. See you later.